All right, guys, it is time to head south to Portugal, to the Autodromo Internacional do Algarve. A very, very challenging racetrack, one of my personal favorites. Why is it so? Let's have a detailed look, shall we? Heading down the start-finish straight, we can already recognize what this track is all about. Ondulation, up and down, as we can also see here for the braking for turn number 1. It is going over a crest into a steep compression before we head into turn number 1. So these undulations we really have to consider when it comes to finding the right timing for our braking. What to do? Look for the reference points. 150 meters, 100 meter mark, depending on your car, rather towards 150 with our sports cars, is a good reference for the braking, depending of course on tires, what kind of car you're in, and the track conditions. Straight line braking will take us into turn number 1. And we carry quite a lot of speed into the corner, and we try also to be early back on a balanced throttle. As we can see here, the driver is applying a little bit of throttle just to keep the rear end of this 911 GT3 RS, by the way, planted to the ground. Aiming for the apex point, making sure we're precise, no touching of the yellow concrete sausage, as we call it, which we have on the inside. We are traveling at about 120 kilometers an hour, and if we would hit that on the inside, we will definitely bend one of those wheels if we're too aggressive. So managing exactly the apex and the distance to the sausage, that is the challenge here in this case. Let's see where it takes us on the exit. All right, the driver is really pushing, and we can see here also another phenomenon here in Portimao. The curbs are rather flat, a little bit of structure before we have concrete surfaces, red solid surfaces. We can use them. Well, what do we have to pay attention to? Track limits, ladies and gentlemen. In this case, I think our driver is using the track to the fullest. We have to make sure that at least 2 wheels are a little bit onto the tarmac, or at least 1 wheel at least onto the tarmac at all times. If not, the lap would kind of like be deleted and not apply for a quick lap. So in this case, I think the driver is using it to the very most, nothing more on the table there. Let's see how it continues into turn number 2, which is leading to the braking for turn 3, slowing down, and this is a very technical corner. Again, we can see how the driver is hugging the inside on the apex. That's obviously very important, but now the driver has to anticipate the line which he or she should choose moving on from here. Turn 3 takes us over to turn 4, and as we can now recognize almost here at the edge of the screen, is that it is an uphill climb, shortly followed after turn 3. So we probably have to sacrifice the exit of turn 3 to make sure we get a good run for turn 4. Let's have a look at how it's done in this case. Yes, sacrificing the exit, making sure we get the car quickly over to the right-hand side to get a good run for turn 4. Turn 4, in the beginning, a nice uphill climb, but it flattens out on the top. That means we will lose that compression, we will lose that road hug we have in the tires when we travel through the corner. So we have to utilize this phase in the beginning where the car is loaded to turn it into the corner, rotate the car so that we can get a good getaway out on the back straight, which is in between this corner, turn 4, and the upcoming corner, turn 5. So let's see how it is done here in this case. Hugging the inside beautifully, using the track for the most. We can also see on the throttle, that looks good. And then track limits, in this case, perfectly executed. Definitely the 2 left-hand side wheels perfectly planted on the track. No issues there. This is also, by the way, in terms of safety, an important corner to feel. If there's too much rotation going on in the car, we have to be aware. Because if we have a rotation here, it's not a long way to go before we are in the armco on the inside. So always be aware, putting down the throttle, that the car is not oversteering too much. In this case, it looks good. Have a look here. Steering is straight. Throttle is fully on. Let's go down the back straight, shall we? Running down, playing up the gears. Again, braking for turn 5 in this case. Same as for turn 1, downhill, bumpy. We need to make sure we find the right timing. Again, we can use the distance markers, which are marked on the armco a little bit further away. So we have to emphasize on looking there and seeing it in time. The next corner, turn 5, is a very, very tight left-hand corner. So we can see here, very, very tight. And the exit is uphill. And we need to make sure that we get the car turned around and good traction going up the hill. So in order to do so, we need to, of course, to be early on throttle, rotate the car, make sure we don't over-rotate the car. We can see some examples actually of that happening here with all the marks, all the spinnings going on, people being too aggressive on throttle, maybe still having the steering a little bit closed. So open up the steering as we feed in the throttle, making also sure that both wheels, both rear wheels in this case, rear wheel driven car, right, that they are perfectly planted. Left side wheel on the tarmac, and you can utilize also the red flat surface on the right hand side to really get traction down. What we should try to avoid is to accelerate fully on the curb. Why? Because it's structured. So traction control will kick in, you will lose traction, you will not get away, and that is important because we are traveling up the hill. Here we go, holding it over on that side, getting a good run for turn 6. Diving into turn 7, I love this section of the track, and then slowing it down for a very, very technical turn 8. Very, very technical turn 8. So this is here, we just manage keeping the car under control. Why? Because we are braking heavily while having a little bit of steering input. What happens? The car will over-rotate, so we need to take back steering. We need to manage the brake pressure to make sure that the car goes in the direction and with the line we need. Managing, of course, also track limits, in this case, nothing to complain about, but also use the track on the other side because we want to widen the radius for turn 8. Hugging the inside, very, very close to the orange sausage, utilizing the exit again, in this case not red, but a green surface, which we can also use to lean on, at least as long as it is dry. In the wets, we have to be careful with all painted surfaces, that's for sure, but this is a beautiful summer day, so use it if it's dry. Getting away on the throttle, then it's quite a ride in between turn 8 into turn 9, diving over the crest, into turn 9, proper compression, proper speed, up to the top, very, very technical corner, turn 10 on the podium. We are braking, we are slowing down, we are trying to be early on the brakes so that we can, again, we can see it already here, slightly on the throttle early to make sure we have a balanced back end, and putting also here, in this case, as we can see, the apex point very late, using the concrete sausage as a reference, apex point very late. Why? Because the exit of turn 10 goes over a crest down a hill, so we need a straight car to be able to put the power down. If not, we will rotate. So that is, again here, a very good line taken. Straight car, full throttle, lots of space. Over on the right-hand side, good run through 11 up to turn 12. Turn 12 is a tricky one. Why? Straight line braking, Lars. Yeah, but it's bumpy, very bumpy. And especially if you cross over the curb is very, very bumpy as well. So we keep it a little bit more onto the track. Late turn in, hug the inside for 12, getting the power down. And then we have two following right-hand corners. They are tricky. Why are they tricky? Because they are running downhill. So if we're not early enough on the brakes, we will have the problem that we are locking up the front inner wheel. If we take it a little bit further, we can see here exactly that happening. People a little bit late on the brakes, the track drops away, and the front right is locking up a little bit. We are not slowing down as efficient as we can. In this case, I think the driver is rather on the late side. We can see brake pressure heavily applied. And at the same time, we are trying to start to turn in. We have to get the rotation going. And yeah, we can see also, how the car is a little bit unstable because we are braking into the corner. So make sure we are early on the brakes, finishing off the brakes, rotating the car back on the throttle. Last corner on the track, very technical one. Same thing applies, it drops off over the hill, down. So let's get a good radius. Let's utilize the beginning, cut to the inside. Now we have to be patient for the car to stabilize, roll into the corner, and as we go down in the compression, we will build grip, and then we can apply more and more throttle. Important to get a good run out on start finish. Last thing we have to mind, not to violate the track limits. We're on the good side. We're on the good side of the last corner, running down to the start finish. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, what a track. This is a feast for anyone driving a sports car or even one of our GT cars. On a track like this, lateral, longitudinal, aerodynamics all comes into play. We are looking forward to be seeing you there.